session, a 40-minute race set to have a whole lot of stuff to worry about if you are these racers. Have to worry about the pit stop. Inside your screen, switched his attention to the massive pack of race cars that's going to blow his doors off and blow off the starter stand. The green flag is out, the drivers are on their way. Locked throughout this race, the grass and the gravel that lines this racetrack. It's old school, so it doesn't have a whole lot of asphalt runoff area. He's a very talented racer of his own. These two fast. He drives very early on into this race. Look at Danny Wood on a big crash heading through turn number 1. That's chasing at turn number 4. And here we go, side-by-side racing off into the corner. This can usually end in tears. One of these drivers is going to have to back out of it. That's going to be Andala. But Maunz still allowing some room coming out of the corner. The side-by-side going up the hill through turn number 6. Spade coming out of the corner. Walker, the Canadian, in the number 96. They are banging doors, heading into the braking time for the final time. They're linked together. Better you put a qualifying fuel load in either way. Getting a whole lot of pressure side by side with himself, and that is
now coming out of the pits. Let's see what his pit lane time is, because this is going to be very important when Yanchi wins.
I don't know what to say. Oh, there's Brett Cathcart upside down. And another driver coming in. That's Jeff Jacobson upside down. Oh, boy. Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Spec Racer Forward Weekend Warriors. This is round number 9 of this season, coming to you today from the Hungaroring. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Charles Boshell. Guido Marzucchi is our producer for tonight's broadcast. And now, based off the fact that I sounded rather inquisitive when I said the Hungaroring, it leads you to believe that this track doesn't get a whole lot of views on the iRacing platform, and that is certainly the case. It's been quite some time since a Weekend Warriors period ran around here, and it's been many moons since the Spec Racer Fords made their appearance around this track. But Charles, it's an odd ride. You got a lot of corners baked into this small little track. It's a tight, twisty, and technical one. It's had some comparisons to Monaco in real life when it comes to F1 running around here, but here in these Spec Racer Fords, it's maybe going to be one of the most challenging tracks all season long.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ron. This is a very technical track. Lots of tight corners, but also a good mix of medium and fast corners as well. So it's gonna really test the drivers out there during the race today, as they get a little bit of everything, a little goulash, if you will, of corners that we've got to navigate today. So looking forward, it's going to be a very interesting race. Obviously, we'll be looking at the front of the field at some of these drivers that are notoriously up near the front week in and week out. And as you can see, Naselli, Pinero, Luke up near the front as we're going through qualifying here. Pretty standard fare, but it's a long race. It's 40 minutes. We've got a pit stop in there, so we'll see if things change during the course of the race today.
And got a whole lot of challenges baked into this race, and these drivers looking to get a good qualifying session. Unlike that Silverstone Formula Ford race that we saw earlier on this afternoon, I have a feeling this track is going to be a lot more challenging for these competitors, a test of driver skill and a test of driver patience as well. This track, despite the fact it's one of the shorter ones in the grand scheme of F1 tracks at just 2.72 miles, has 14 turns baked into it, meaning the lap times are just barely under that 2-minute mark for some of the drivers at the north end of the field, but this is going to be a good race to ring in the final 4 rounds of this championship. Getting to crunch time when it comes to those championship point situations, we're going to take a look at those standings coming into this 9th race of this season here for Season 2 of 2025. And it's Jason Green, your current points leader in Spec 1. He's been quick all season long, looking to redeem himself after coming up oh so close in that championship fight last season. He's slotted in first in front of Maurizio Nazelli, who's a little bit farther back in P2. Felix Samoas is well farther back, so it's really a 2-horse race at the moment in the Spec 1 category. Looks like it's either going to be the American of Jason Green or the German of Maurizio Nazelli taking it home at the end of this season. That's how it looks like in Spec 1. In Spec 2, it's definitely a bit more intense. Eric Luke has been rather quick up to this point in the season. The driver of the 709 car slotted in P1, and Matt Thompson is a little bit farther back in P2, not nearly as far as the gap was in Spec 1, so Spec 2 looking real intense. The fight involving Paul Jackson, Andrew Love, and Paolo Breme, that's looking rather intense as well. Basically nothing between the drivers in 3rd and 4th as we take a quick look over to the Masters class, where Tom Gradwell and Jeff Fritcher are oh so close at the top of the point standings. You can see 461 for Gradwell, 449 for Jeff Fritcher. Kurt Nunez, Brad Cathcart, Jim Brewster round out your top 5 in those Masters points. But Charles, that battle for the Masters Championship, probably the closest that we have of the 3 classes here in the SRFs.
Yeah, it's pretty close, and Fritcher's had a really good run of late. He's won the last couple of races, and so he's just trying to extend that gap just a little bit, and we'll see if he can manage to hang on and get another class win today. Let's take a minute and talk about the challenges for today's race. So item number 1 on my list was you have to attack the curbs and the chicane. Obviously, the line you've got to run here, you've got to just be aggressive on this track, because obviously if you're just running around and avoiding the curbs, you're going to lose tenths or maybe seconds during the course of the race. Part 2, smooth transitions through the corners. As we talked about, there's some very fast corners. Specifically, I'm thinking about 2, 3, 4. Those you just really have to have the right line, and you really have to keep the momentum forward and make the time up through there. Finally, also look for the passing in the braking zone. We do have a few good braking zones here, some hard braking areas, specifically turn 1 going into that chicane as well. So you got to be aggressive on that as well, and you got to try and take a chance or 2 here if you're going to pick up a few spots.
And you do have to put it on the line to get the maximum amount of pace and the maximum amount of potential out of your car in this race that we have coming up. And I think as we are still in this qualifying session, may do an onboard lap here in a couple of moments with Joachim Osbeck, who it was a little bit of confusion last time out, but he is now a Spec 1 racer, has graduated from the Spec 2 category, is currently qualified in 6th at the present moment. So let's follow Joachim on this onboard lap, heading down into turn number 1.
Yep.
Yeah, there we can see Osbeck hang down into turn number 1 right now. I think my iRacing is slightly off the fritz as I'm currently following Kurt Nunez at the present moment, so I need to get these fixed. But here's turn number 2, the downhill, seemingly never-ending left-hander. Super tough to try and nail down in these race cars, so you want to get it right through there. That's turn number 3 that we just saw Osbeck go through right there. The quick kink. Now here's another quick kink. It's turn number 4. You want to try and spot that inside curve and try and avoid going off the track. Some of the off-track penalties that you may get are rather brutal around here with an instant point limit as well. That's going to be super tough as well. That was the hairpin-ish corner of turn at number 5, down into the quick chicane of 6 and 7. It feels very similar, as you said a little bit earlier on this afternoon, Charles. Kind of feels like the final chicane at Magny Court in an odd way, but immediately after that, you've got the meandering S's through 8 a couple of moments ago, through turn number 9, on corner exit about to head off into turn number 10, which is the most open of these small OSs right towards the end of the lap. Heading into turn number 10, which is basically completely 90 degrees. It may not seem like that from the cockpit, though. Usually feels a little bit more open than that. This is turn number 12, one of the final corners around this racetrack. A good overtaking opportunity with a heavy braking zone in through it. Now down into turn lucky number 13, the hairpin right towards the end of this lap. A good spot to maybe get a move done if you don't get it done with authority heading through turn number 12. 12. And if you're still side by side coming out there, you're going to be in for a world of hurt through turn 14. The final corner around this racetrack, super important to get a good exit out of there. Hit that outside curve, and that is a lap of the Hungaroring.
Yeah, that was a good lap by Spec. He's P7 overall. So good run. He's only about 7/10 behind Marco Pinero up there on the pole. So he looks like he's settled in and ready for this race. And yeah, just a great lap. And like you could see the challenge that this track is going to present with these cars. You know, they want to roll a little bit through the corners. Paulo Bremi, come on, there we go. All right, got it. So a little squirrely there on corner entry, but gets it wrangled back up and continues on. So yeah, you can see the challenges this track presents, and it's just going to be one of those that, you know, it gets amplified when you get in traffic. And so, you know, hopefully that you can get your passes made, or you may have to just defer and let a guy go temporarily until you can kind of reset, because obviously, you know, once you start going side by side through these corners, it's going to be very difficult as the cars behind you start gaining tenths of a second every corner seemingly.
Super tough, this racetrack. Very, very technical, very, very twisty. And in these Spec Racer Fords, if you have some sort of spin or some sort of moment, you are going to lose out on a boatload of time. this field is rather close together. The front row sitter is currently made up of Marco Pinero and Eric Luke, your Spec 2-man, currently separated by 0.08 of a second. 81 thousandths is a gap between those two competitors on the front row. And even look at this man, Flavio Andallo, currently qualified in 6th. He's only a tick under 0.6 of a second, actually no, 0.6 of a second even to himself and Eric Luke, and just a tick under 7 to the pole man. Maurizio Nazelli jumps up into 2nd, not enough to beat Pinero at the end of this qualifying session. Jason Green improves on his lap time, goes to 5th, but not going to be enough for the pole for him either. Getting to the end of this qualifying session with that checkered flag as, here's Joachim Osbeck coming right to the line, and this will be, is it higher than 7th for Osbeck? It is not an improvement. He will remain in at P7. Here's Diego Todeschini here in the 627 car, heading his way off into turn at number 5, getting compliments from Guido in the production truck. I can pronounce some things, kind of, sort of, not really.
Ron has completed level 1 of Duo Guido for Italian racing names.
I'm going to take the wins while I can get them. We were having a conversation before we went live on this broadcast, kind of talking about some name pronunciations, and as an American who's pretty much spent a majority of his life in the city of Philadelphia, and the farthest down south he has gone in his entire time being anything more than just a barely sentient speck as a baby, was down in Washington, D.C. So even as someone who's been out to the Midwest, I am not very well traveled as an American. So not very good when it comes to pronunciations. My German ancestors would be rolling in their graves listening to some of the stuff that I've said in terms of German name pronunciations in my time doing this broadcasting stuff. But Charles, right at the end of this qualifying session, it looks like Marco Pinero will stay at the front.
It does appear so, but 0.03 of a second between him and Naselli. So it's going to be a great battle up front. Look for fireworks. I think Naselli is a very both drivers are very aggressive, so it's going to be a nice battle up front. And we'll see if we get a surprise winner like we've seen over the past few weeks.
Yeah, we have had some shock winners this season, and it was so shocking, in fact, that I forgot how to speak English for a second. So I think with that squared away and putting that in our rearview mirror, just looking through some of the races that we've had up to this point. Spec 1 has been rather up and down. We've had the likes of Maurizio Nazelli, who won last time out of Bathurst. He's scored some wins. Jason Green has scored the most amount of wins out of anybody at 3 thus far. Solau Shuckweed grabbed some wins. Marco Pinero won at Long Beach, and Felix Samoas was able to grab a win at Magny-Cours, albeit I don't think Felix is racing with us here today, is deciding to switch his attention to the Formula Fords and the Formula Vs, which you can also catch here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Even looking at Spec, too, where it's been a bit more dominated by Eric Luke and Andrew Love. Luke already has 5 wins up to this point in the season, and hey, based off the fact he'll be starting this race in 3rd, I'm sure he's going to look to continue on his dominance in the Spec 2 category. Meanwhile, in Masters, it's been Jeff Fritscher and Kurt Nunez taking the lion's share of the victories up to this point in the season. But hey, we've got a challenging race in front of us, and to get things up and rolling, let's take a look at the starting grid for today's race. And it's going to be the number 16 of Marco Panera, the Italian, starting this race from the pole position. Maurizio Nazelli will join him on the front row. It's a Floridian of Eric Luke starting in 3rd, next to Elise Pleva in 4th. Jason Green will start in 6th, alongside Flavio Andallo in 6th. We have Joachim Osbeck in P7. Jeff Fritscher grabbing the Masters pole will start this race in 8th, alongside the 2 drivers on the 5th row is going to be Josh Wilkie and Kurt Nunez.
Yep, starting in P11th, and looks like our P2 in Spec 2 is Matt Thompson. Diego Todeschini on the outside in P12. Paolo Brima in P13. Tom Gradwell in 14th. Adam Bradshaw in 15th. Philip Berry in 16th. Paul Jackson 17th. Brad Cathcart in 18th. Jeff Jacobson 19th. Andrew Love ends your top 20. We got Mario Krimzer in P21, Michele Valini in P22, and Andrea Favini in our final starting position in 23rd.
So those are your 23 starters for this race, getting more compliment from Guido in the production truck. Michele Valini starting this race a little bit farther in the back. I feel like my pronunciation was a little bit off compared to yours there, Charles, but nonetheless, I think we're only going to have 22 starters, as Andre Favini is still down in the pits at the present moment. Not sure if the Swede will be taking to the grid for this very short formation lap. They're going to be heading their way off into turn number 12 through 12, 13, and 14, and then they're going to get the green flag for a 40-minute long race in front of these drivers. And before we grab the green, it should be noted that today's broadcast of the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors is brought to you by Alliance Auto Sports. Based in Columbus, Ohio, Alliance Auto Sports' mission is to provide unparalleled racing support and services to their clients. Whether it be car prep or driver coaching and development, the hardworking team at Alliance strive to build a community of passionate and successful racers. Alliance specializes in SRF 3, FE2, and TA2 machinery, and their track record in those classes should tell you everything you need to know about the great team of talented people over there. For more information, head on off to allianceautosport.com. We would like to thank Alliance and their professional work and their fantastic organization for being a sponsor of this second half of the season here for the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. About to grab the green, which we have now, and the drivers are on their way. It's a good start for Panero. He's going to lead them off into turn number 1. Maurizio Nazelli already tucking into the draft. It may not be the longest straightaway in the world, but it's more than enough time for Nazelli to close up that gap and go for a move down the inside off into turn number 1. Elise Pleva looking to get some moves done on Eric Luke as well, currently slotted in 3rd. Flavio and Dallo getting off to a good start as well. Some 3 wide action, some locking up a little bit farther in the back. Nazelli jumping into an early lead as they head their way off into turn 2.
Yeah, good start by everybody. You had a couple of position changes, but no incidents, so we're continuing on with a good starting first lap, as they're still kind of going 2 by 2, so they're going to have to be very careful they don't back things up, and they got to get lined up here and get this race going in full tilt.
Now, get them lined up, get them squared away around a racetrack like this. It's super tough to continue on a side-by-side fight lap after lap, race after race. So these drivers got to be dancing around on eggshells in this race that we have coming up. I briefly mentioned this in qualifying, and going to play a role in this race doubly so, considering the amount of drivers we've seen pick up penalties for incident point violations thus far in this season. A reminder to anyone who hasn't tuned into this series before, 13x is the limit, 18x nets you a DQ, and if you look at the rules section when you load into this session here on iRacing, just about every single corner, if you go south of the curb, you're going to pick up some sort of incident point. So the track limit's going to be a huge factor in this race. These drivers really have to dance around on eggshells.
Yeah, they're going to have to balance that aggressive nature of driving this track, taking as much curb as you can with, just like I said, knowing your track limit and taking as much as you can, but no more, as we see the 905 car there. That is Brad Cathcart getting a little wide coming through the corner, lost a couple positions, but he's settled back in.
Settled in, no harm, no foul done, and it seems like forever And that's because it is. These cars don't take, they take their sweet time heading around this racetrack. So about to complete lap number 1 with Maurizio Nazelli at the front. Marco Pinero in P2. Alace Pleva rounding out your overall podium. Eric Luke is your top running Spec 2 driver with a bit of a cushion between himself and Diego Todeschini. So that is a good gap there. And Jeff Fritcher is still leading it in the Masters class as a lockup for Todeschini. The immediate commentator's jinx falling the way of the 627 car. That falling anvil striking him in the form of a lockup down to turn 1.
Yeah, once again, a little deep, locked the wheels up, had to just kind of cadence brake to get the car slowed down, but had to take a wide line, lost a couple positions, but continues on.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like a lot of harm or foul done in all of that, and should be known that Andre Favini actually did take to the start of this race, found himself all the way up in P17 at the present moment, a dream start for the driver of the number 27 machine, looking at Mario Kremser and some of the other drivers a little bit farther in the back, bit spread out there, but the front of the field, it is still Nazelli in front of Pinero, in front of Pleva, in front of Luke, and then you have a bit of a cushion between Luke and Flavio and Gallo. You can just see the pack continues on. Here's Kurt Nunez, kind of part of that last trio of cars involved in that front pack fight. 12 cars at the north end of the field, pretty much all running in a line with a small little break between Wilkie in 9th and Nunez in 10th.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of the way the race is going to lay out. As you see these cars, the cars behind will get a little tow, and so if they're maybe a couple tenths off the pace of the cars in front, they'll be able to hang in there because the tow is going to help them. And we'll see what our next lap time is. Going to be a sub 2 minutes, but you mentioned this is one of the shortest tracks, at least on the F1 calendar. But yet, these are still slow laps. And I felt like that was a spin there that we didn't catch. but as they come around the final corner there to finish the second lap, we'll get our lap times and see what is what here as they come through. And yeah, 1:59. So a 2-minute lap time. For one of the shortest tracks on the calendar for F1, so it's one of the shorter tracks that we've, I guess, probably a medium-sized track for us. Obviously, we run it, places like VIR, which is almost double the length.
Yeah, and compared to Bathurst last time, Matt, where the lap times were, I think, in the 2-minute 30 bracket, this track is going to feel like a short run. Phoenix on the road course next time, Matt, man, that is going to be a rather fun one. And Silverstone National for the race after that. We saw that with the Formula Fords earlier on. That's going to be a short lap if ever you saw one. And talk about a Treff Fest. Wowzers. But it's still... We got to switch our attention to this race here at the Hungaroring before we start thinking about some Draft Fest races that will round off this season. It's still close at the front. Nazelli, Pinero, Pleva, and Luke all running in a tow. And now I bring this up occasionally on these Weekend Warriors broadcasts. I say occasionally. I think I bring it. Oh, boy, that's a dive from Paolo Brema heading down into turn number 5. The 555 car trying to make something work on the inside of Bradshaw to slip his way up into another spot. And it looks like he got that move done to get his way up into P13. And now Andre Favini got involved in that battle as well.
Yeah, I think that was Phil Berry in the 888 that was kind of diving in there too. So yeah, that's kind of what you have to do. You have to be aggressive in those braking zones. You got to try and make the moves when you have the opportunity, and that was well done. And it was clean pass. And everybody else is just kind of lining up, and we'll see who else is going to try and make another run coming down this next straightaway.
I would give myself an excuse saying the 888 and the 555 cars look similar. They do not on my end. I'm not sure if I have the paint schemes loaded up. Paolo Brema's car is a bright red, and Phil Berry's car, which I believe still has a Cookie Monster livery on it, but for some reason iRacing does not like me, and Trading Paints does not like me either, so his car is pitch black. So no excuses on my end. I am just an airhead at certain points in time. Here's Jeff Fritcher. He is running very good at the present moment. Your leader in Masters, and has a bit of a cushion between himself and Kurt Nunez. You can just barely see him in the 918 car heading his way down into turn at number 1 as we follow Fritcher. I was going to raise his point, but before we saw that dive from Phil Berry on Bradshaw down into turn 5, I may have to eat my words yet again as we nearly see some drivers going side by side and battling their way off into turn at number 1. It is some battling with Andre Favini and Bradshaw heading down the hill off into turn number 2. Favini holding onto the inside line in the number 27 car. Bradshaw in the 929 going to concede that spot as they head their way through the exit of the corner. But the point that I have been trying to raise for the past lap that these drivers have not allowed me to spit out is the fact that thus far here in the Weekend Warriors in the Formula Vs, Formula Fords, and Spec Racer Fords, we have yet to have a non-Spec 1 winner in any of the series. I have a feeling that if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen in the Spec Racer Fords just because of how quick Eric Luke has been.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that, Fritcher has also been very, very quick. He's been up near the top 5 pretty much every race. But yeah, I think Eric is the odds-on favorite to get a win, a non-Spec 1 winner. So we'll have to see. But when you talk about the tracks we have upcoming, Silverstone National, we just saw a fantastic race. The last 10 minutes was just brilliant by Ian Joyner and Mikey Pollard. Just fantastic racing side by side for like 3 solid laps. So it's that layout just is conducive to with these Spec Racer cars, with the draft that they're capable of making. It could be a last lap pass, last corner pass coming out to take the victory, because you got enough little room there to make a draft up. And even Pollard had made that run at the end. There was only 600ths of a second, so that might be the one that we start looking at.
Yeah, and we are still in the rather early stages of this race. 8.5 minutes on the board of this 40-minute long race. It's going to feel a little bit different than that Silverstone Formula Ford race earlier on here with the Spec Racer Fords at the Hungaroring. It's going to feel like a while for these racers. When it comes, all the races here from the SRF Weekend Warriors are all 40 minutes long, so it's not like this race is significantly longer. But when it comes to the psyche of these drivers, when you're just dealing with corner after corner, lap after lap for 40 minutes straight, it can be a little bit mentally tiring at certain points.
Yeah, it's probably a more physically demanding 40 minutes than it would be at, say, a place like Silverstone National, where you're just kind of arcing your car into the corner and seeing what sticks. This one is you got to really get your line. You got to watch the traffic around you, and you really have to set your lines and set your corner entries and work your way through. And you're going to take that vibration of all the curb strikes. So yeah, it's going to be much more of a workout, and it's going to feel like they've raced out here for about 2 hours.
Yeah, I feel like there's a certain amount of racetracks where you can really just put them in a category where they are the most physically demanding. You think, oh yeah, it's iRacing. These drivers aren't going to have to worry about the G-force and everything. They're still having to turn these race cars around a track, and the force feedback is going to really mess with their arms at the end of all this. From the field, though, a bit of a gap forming potentially between Azelli and Panero. Now about 0.8 of a second. It's looking like the pack is actually broken up a little bit. There's Josh Wilkie running down in P9. There may have been some drivers having mistakes.
Yeah, it's kind of what it may be. It may be a couple drivers just getting off line a little bit. Josh has dropped off about 3 seconds behind Ospec, running in P8, but that top group is still pretty tight together. So that'll be. I think that's going to last for quite most of the race. I think once we get to pit stops, that'll start breaking this field up a little more. You may see more of the 2-3 car battles during the course of the final laps.
And when we get to the end of this race, I wonder who's going to be the one sticking their nose out and being like, hey, I've been up here at the front for oh so long. I want to try and stake my claim on a race win. Getting to crunch time for the season. These drivers looking to get some good results as contact being made. A double spin. Big one. Contact being made. I can also see, I believe that was Mario Kremser in the 278 car getting a piece of that drama, touching Bradshaw after Bradshaw and Jeff Jacobson went for some synchronized spins heading through turn number 2. That downhill section so inviting to go for a maneuver, but with that downhill off camber turn, it is so easy to just skate into the side of your competitor's race car.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see and that's just one of those iRacing things. It's 2 cars with different lines trying to hit the apex, and you just saw the contact made, caused both cars to spin. As we see, Bradshaw has, looks like he's towed back to the pits. He has indeed. And then, of course, Crims are just nowhere to go, really, because you've got 2 cars spinning side by side. They've basically blocked the track.
We're going to take a look at another moment involving Bradshaw. You can see him running mega wide. That was heading through turn at number 5, turn number 4. There we
Yep.
go. Second tries to chart. See, you can tell based off my wavering voice that I was a little bit unconfident in that. But yeah, running wide through turn number 4 into turn number 5. And it sounded like a ghost there for a second. 5. Oh boy, we've got Jason Green running in the front of a tail. He's actually lost touch with those drivers at the front of the field, so I think we're starting to see these drivers settle into a groove and seeing the true pace setters rise to the top.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, it was only about 3/10 difference between Eric Luke and Jason Green that last lap, but apparently those little tenths here and there over the course of now 6 laps of full racing is starting to pay dividends to the cars up front. So now you've got a 2-car battle, and you've got Pleva and Eric Luke trying to track them down. Obviously, when they get on these straights, the draft will help close that gap back up a little bit. And that's so as long as those 2 cars out front stay nose to tail, it's going to be very tough for that second group to make some time back up to get back up to the front.
And there's still a lot of time left to go in this race for these competitors as well. Just ticking over the 13-minute mark of this 40-minute long race, and following these drivers as they head their way off through that chicane. Charles, I mentioned this in my open, and well, not in my open, in my track guide. I felt kind of bad mentioning it, but that 6 and 7 chicane, it was one that you likened to the final chicane at Magny Cours, which I feel like is a rather good comparison in just both chicanes that are rather clunky to drive around in all sorts of different race cars, with curbs on the inside that can ping you off into a different country's airspace.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's it is very much like that. You have to be aggressive because obviously, if you don't, then you're going to lose a couple tenths just going through the chicane, and so you have to be really aggressive on those curbs. But that orange sausage curb on that second part of the chicane is deadly if you get it wrong, and you have to be very, very careful with it. I've seen, I've experienced it firsthand, so we'll just say it like that. It is one of those curbs that will absolutely kill you if you let it. But as part of the price you have to pay is to get your fast laps in. You got to go hard at it.
And speaking of going hard at it, these drivers at the front of the field are maybe going to risk it for the biscuit or risk it for the Triscuit if they're feeling the low-calorie option here, which, hey, it's a Hungaroring. They're already getting a workout as well. May as well be totally healthy and go for the Triscuit here, as Nazelli is still in front of Panera, who's in front of Pleva, who's in front of Eric Luke. Luke is a driver that I still want to keep my eyes on throughout the rest of this race as we take a look at a battle. Maybe go flare up involving Paul Jackson and Jeff Jacobson. These two drivers running P18 and P19 respectively. About a half a second between the two of them, but I think that may have been caused because half spin for Jacobson coming out of the final turn, which is barely see it in our camera shot from the slow motion broadcasting helicopter, the only helicopter in the entirety of sim racing broadcasters that has insurance protection for impacts with a race car, as that was how Jacobson actually got in front of Andrew Love about a lap beforehand. That was a sideways snap from Love coming out of turn number 1, allowed Jacobson to jump in front, but then the racing gods giveth and the racing gods taketh away, as he had a moment about 1 lap later.
Yeah, it's you can see there's a few drivers out here that are struggling with a couple corners. That last corner is not the easiest thing in the world. It's one of those rhythm corners, as you see. There's Jacobson catching his car. Those outside curbs will kind of bite you if you take it the wrong way. So you have to be very careful through there, and that's basically the same with all the curbs. Some of these curbs are pretty easy to deal with. That one on the outside of that final corner is definitely not.
As we're going to take a look in a moment, maybe involving Jeff Fritcher. This was a big moment. Yes, it was a moment for your leader in the Masters class. Contact being made as he headed his way through turn number 1. That, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, was himself and Joachim Osbeck. So that could have ended in pure unbridled disaster. It still was not a good moment for Fritcher. That cushion that he had in the Masters class has now just about disappeared. He's now in a side-by-side fight with himself and Matt Thompson, your P2 runner with the Spec 2 runners. Got to lose out on another spot. And there's Kurt Nunez. I liken these gaps in class to having a spare parachute whenever you go skydiving. It's nice to have it. It gives you some extra comfort, but in an ideal world, you wouldn't use it. Jeff Fritcher's first shoot failed. He now has to work extra hard to try and hold on to this lead. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. He's got his main rival behind him. challenging him. Oh, as we see, this is Philip Berry, or does it Totoschini? Totoschini, we'll get it here. It looks like, yep, as we're coming through, and let's say, is that, what turn was that? Not really sure.
Turn 1.
We'll get, yeah, it might have been, yep, I think you're right. As we see him working his way through 2, and just, yeah, too much entry, turn in on entry, maybe a little fast, and I think that's what a few of the drivers and most of the drivers are kind of struggling with that we're seeing is their speed going into the corners is maybe they're just missing that a little bit, maybe carrying a little too much, and that's caused them to have to either brake harder, which will lock the tires, or they'll have to try and give a little more turn in, and that just causes the rear end to come around.
Now we're seeing a lot of those drivers run into some difficulties because of the elevation change around this racetrack, and this is going to be an odd tangent, so bear with me to all of you tuning into this broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. The Hungaroring, as far as I'm concerned, is the most medium racetrack of all. Medium distance at about 2.74 miles, medium amount of corners at about 14, so that's around about the same you usually get at racetracks, and medium amount of elevation change as well. It's not a pancake like some other tracks, but it's not a track like Spa either, where you're basically running up and down the side of a mountain. You just have enough elevation change to keep these drivers on their toes, and one of the drivers who is now tiptoeing his way down the pits is Jeff Frischer from the lead in the Masters category. Just came in. This is a scheduled stop, I believe, from the driver who at one point was your leader in the Masters category. I wonder if that moment heading down into turn number 12 with himself and Joachim Mosbeck may be part of the reason why he's decided to go for this off-kilter strategy.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we're coming up to the halfway point, so it's not totally horrible strategy, just midpoint the race. But luckily we're enough laps, enough time in that he was able to do a within the pit window. He's able to go and get his stop done. He'll get his fast repair, and that maybe still in potential there for a class win. So not out of the woods just yet.
Eric Luke is still leading comfortably in Spec 2 with Maurizio Nazelli, your leader of the race overall. As we take a look at a battle maybe going to flare up involving, that's Paolo Breme in front of Andrea Favini, heading their way off through the mid-sector of the racetrack right now. Favini has been on the hard charge from the drop of the green flag all the way through to where we find ourselves in this race right about now. 11 spots gained, which is a mighty effort from him. The next closest driver to gain spots is actually Andrew Love, who's running in P16. He's up 4 spots. So Andre Favini, he's been a quick driver. We've covered races where Andre Favini has won here in the Spec Race for the Weekend Warriors. I guess for this season, he just wants to give himself last to first challenges every single week.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, he's quite quick. He's one of the guys you would normally expect to be up in the top 5 at the end of the race. But he says, you know what, I'm going to just kind of start in the back and we'll just see if we can make some passes. He will go for the Naselli award for most overtakes during the race. As we just had Alex Pleva set the fastest lap of the race with a 158.5. So the front group is starting to get a little racy.
We see some racing heading on down into turn number 1. The fight flares up yet again between Favini and Breme. That's going to allow Favini to jump into P11. Breme falls down to 12th as Phil Berry in the Cookie Monster car may be going to look for the crumbs if these two drivers come to blows. That was terrible. I apologize. Favini now occupying the first spot outside of the top 10. Bit of a gap between themselves and Kurt Nunez occupying that final spot in the top 10 and your lead in Masters as well. But that doesn't mean these drivers aren't going to give us a heck of a battle to talk about at the present moment. Paul Jackson, he's come down pit lane, finds himself in 21st. Adam Bradshaw has retired from this race after incidents we saw the driver involved in a little bit earlier on in this race. As we go back to the front and find Maurizio Nazelli still holding off the challenge from Pinero. Now Nazelli got into the race lead rather early on, but even though this track doesn't have many flat-out blasts, he's still the one punching the hole in the air. So I got to imagine the fuel mileage that he's getting at the moment is not something that would make environmental activists very happy.
No, probably not. He is probably doing the bulk of the work up at the front of the group. But, we're talking about 4 cars still up there, only a half second between each car. And then you got a nice little 3-second gap back to Jason Green in fifth. So he's pulling that train for the three that are behind him. But then Jason's got his own work to do. But Jason's always been good on fuel. We'll see if he can do that from the front. He's normally really comfortable just kind of riding around in the back and saving, trying to get to that pit stop. So we'll see if Jason can kind of work that magic when he's out leading a pack.
And we still have to think about the strategies that these drivers will try and go for. We've seen the difficulties in some of these drivers attempting some overtakes. If it isn't down into turn number 1, it may end in disaster. So I think these drivers are maybe thinking, you know what, maybe a good idea just to try and make this strategy work and jump these drivers through a run through pit lane. We saw in that Formula Ford race earlier on at Silverstone, albeit much different cars, not a lot of drivers carrying over from that Formula Ford race into the Spec racer Ford 1 right now. That's a big curb whack from Paolo Breme. He's going to lose out on a spot maybe to Phil Berry. Stalls out on that inside line, heading his way down the hill off into turn number 3. He will remain in lucky number 13, so unable to take a chump out of that gap and move his way up into 12th.
Yeah, it was just not enough there as we see, but he's still hanging in there. Phil Berry is still hanging behind Breme, and doing a good job. And this group is looking pretty racy as well. And you've got Todeschini back there hanging behind, and they're doing everything they can to try and hang on to Andrea Favini, who's just a rocket ship right now. He's closing that gap up to Nunez in short order. I don't know why I said Nunez, and it's Nunez. Sorry about that, Kurt.
I like how you say that while I'm in the booth, as if I'm not speaking in tongues heading through most of these broadcasts. Nick Fleck, Blurny, Kondo, Flurn. But we've got Paolo Breme still involved in this battle. Phil Berry running right in tow, and Diego Todeschini getting involved in all of this action as well. You can see him now trying to get a move done on Phil Berry down the inside off into turn number 13. Will it be a move for the Italian on the Aussie? Yes, it will, because right now the 88 getting tripped up as Breme comes into pit lane. They're still side by side heading through the final corner. Look at Phil Berry running all the way up on the inside curb heading through the final turn. But Breme being one of the first drivers that we have seen to come into the pits. I think unlike that Silverstone race that we had earlier on, these drivers may be going to be a bit more united when it comes to the strategy calls that they will try and do in this race, which is a bit shocking considering I said a couple of minutes ago that they may try and go for some off-the-wall strategies to make some moves happen.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it's just everybody's kind of running the tank out. It didn't feel like this was going to be a place where an undercut was going to be very useful. So it kind of makes sense that everybody's just running as hard as they can. We've seen some cars come in that they kind of do the midpoint of the race. They'll get to the 20-25 minute mark, and they'll come in and take their pit stop. They can start with a little less fuel and makes their pit stops a little longer, but they save that way at the beginning, and hopefully allows them to get a couple positions at the beginning of the race that they can hang on to.
As one driver looking to hang on to something, as Kurt Nunez looking to hang on to the lead in the Masters category. Jeff Fritcher, who came into the pits a little bit earlier on and was your leader at one point in the Masters class, currently slotted in P17. Kurt Nunez, he's been the other driver to grab wins up to this point here in the Masters class, so we may have to talk about him grabbing another win in that 918 car at some point between now and the checkered flag. Hasn't won in quite some time. In fact, the last time he was able to grab a win was actually in round number 4 of this season at Long Beach, so it's been quite some time. In fact, that Long Beach race was contested all the way back on April 13th, so been about a month and some change long dry spell for him. But hey, if there's any time to break it, it's here at the Hungaroring. 2 very tight and technical racetracks.
Yeah, absolutely. As we see the gap back there, showing the gap distance between P4 Eric Luke and P5 Jason Green. You see that gap is growing. It's from 1.7 now up to almost 4 seconds over the course of 5 laps. So Jason not having the best of days, as you can see him just kind of fighting the car on corner entry there. So maybe a little bit of a setup issue that he's have to or not comfortable with. Or maybe it was just the curbs. I think he was in one of those rain gutter curbs that we've seen at Spa primarily. that's got kind of the drainage built into it, and it just kind of makes the car a little squirrely when you're riding in that. Makes it hard to control, and maybe that's causing Jason some problems.
Yeah, some of the curves around this track, you can see it, especially heading off through the chicane. You got the exit curve coming out of it, which is flat as a pancake with a little bit of a rippling here just to give you some nice sound effects to hear as you're driving your race car. Then you've got the anti-cut curbs, and you hit those, and as we said a little bit earlier on, the opportunity of hopping so far up into the air that you go into a neighboring country's airspace. I mean, we saw it last time out with the Formula Fords at Snetterton 1 week ago, and seeing that again here in the Spec Racer Fords at the Hungaroring. Haven't seen too many drivers pop their way up into low Earth orbit yet, but hey, we still have 12.5 minutes left on the clock, and we do have those jumps at the end of it, but what we've got is the top three coming into the pits, Nazelli, Pinero, and Pleva all coming in. As Eric Luke, your Spec 2 leader, going to stay at for another lap.
Yep, Jason Green in as well, and Eric's going to stay out for another lap or two. It should be coming up. I don't know. Maybe this is one of those tracks where you can kind of extend into that 30-minute zone. But I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on. Have to keep an eye on Eric there to see if he comes in on the next lap or if he can keep going a little bit more. Andalo also comes through and did not stop. So we have a few of the front runners that are coming in, and so now it's going to be, what does that do for the cars that stayed out for the additional couple laps? Do they get any benefit from that, or do they not?
And when it comes to the strategy, it's oh so important in these races. You get it right, you're going to be feeling like a bed of roses. You get it wrong, and you're going to be feeling like a bed of nails. So let's see who's going to get nailed and who is going to be smelling pretty at the end of all of this here. Andrew Love coming into the pits along with Mikhail Valini, running down in 17th at the present moment. So more drivers saying that now is the time to pit. I'm not necessarily surprised by this call from Eric Luke. I wonder what he has cooking up, though, in that 709 car. I mean, that's a pretty good spot to find himself in if he came in with those drivers, but I think Eric Luke wants a little bit more. He's been quick. He leads that Spec 2 class by quite a long ways. I think he wants a shot at a victory overall.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Maybe he thinks he's got the right strategy. We'll find out soon enough. I will say that Pinero did come out quite a bit earlier than Naselli, so he's got himself about a second-and-a-half gap between Pinero and Naselli. If Favini's actually tightened his gap up, he's down only about 9/10 behind Naselli, and he's jumped Pleva. So Pleva comes out in that group of four. It comes out in fourth. Jason Green is right behind him, and that gap for Jason is closed a little bit. So he's managed to knock off about a second and a half. So it's going to be really interesting as we have the leader in now.
Eric Luke in the pits in the 709. Let's see if he is joined by the likes of Flavio Andalo. He is not. He is joined by Joachim Osbeck. Let's see if Josh Wilkie in the number 23 car will follow in suit. Yes, he will. Will the second place runner in Spec 2, Matt Thompson, he will join these drivers in the pits as well. Andalo stays out for another lap. Flavio Andalo, usually one of the last drivers to come down in pit lane. We saw it last time out at Bathurst. We're seeing it yet again here at the Hungaroring. Eric Luke, he's on pit exit right now as Marco Pinero is heading his way down that start-finish straightaway off into turn at number 1. Will it be a winning strategy for Luke? It's not going to net him the race lead, but I think he's going to be right alongside Maurizio Nazelli. In fact, a little bit in front of him heading down into turn number 1. Will have to get those tires up to temperature in that 709 car, but now it's an interesting dilemma. Will Eric Luke and Maurizio Nazelli work together as pseudo teammates to reel in that number 16 of Marco Pinero? Or is it going to be Pinero's win for the taking?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Is going to be, it's a little early to tell, but I think as long as Naselli feels like Luke has got some good pace, he'll kind of hang behind and wait for the opportunity to make a pass. If he thinks he's going to end up losing Pinero, then he's going to make his move early, because obviously if you start going side by side, you're going to lose time to that leader. So he's going to just kind of gauge and see where he is, and if he feels like he's going to get held up, he's going to make that move and try and get by.
As waiting now to see Flavio Andallo potentially come into the pits this time by. We have 8.5 minutes left to go on the clock of this 40-minute long race. These pit stops are mandatory for these drivers, so as much as Andallo may have done a lot of fuel saving, spending a lot of this race in the draft, he has to come into the pits, and let's see if he will do it this time by. That will give the race lead back to Marco Pinero. Yes, he does come into the pit, so that is that squared away. Andallo comes in, and that is going to be Pinero jumping into the race lead here in a couple of moments time. The gap between Pinero and Luke will get a better idea as to how it is once these drivers get back into their rightful spots, so to speak, for lack of a better term, back into P1, P2, and P3. But I think that gap has grown ever so slightly between Pinero and Eric Luke, and Dallo out and away of the pits already. I'm not sure if he will get involved in this battle unless he spent about 2 seconds in pit lane. No, he is going to drop back a little bit, and yeah, will find himself outside of the top 5 as a result of this pit cycle. I was thinking at first, I saw that pit exit blimp pop up on the graphics. I was like, no way. Did he come into the pits for 2 seconds just to say, hi, pit crew, bye, pit crew?
Yeah, no, apparently not. So yeah, he's got his pit stop done. As you mentioned, he's out. Actually, Andallo's out in P6. Oh, there's Jeff Jacobson around. And I think he's towed back to the pits. He has indeed. So I think that's race done for him. I don't think he's back out on the track. As we are still watching this battle up front, gap is slowly closing a little bit between Luke and Pinero, but then it kind of grows again. So it's pretty static around 1.5. Naselli is closing that gap behind. He's only at 0.2 of a second as we're looking on board here with Ozbek. And I will go back and say that, hey, Fritchard did the right call. He came into the pits early after that contact, and he's taken the Masters class lead again, running in P10.
And he has a bit of a cushion between himself and Kurt Nunez yet again, and Nunez may be going to have to worry about battling with Andre Favini in the not-too-far-off future, as here's a fight between two Spec 2 competitors. It's Diego Todeschini and Phil Berry heading their way off through the mid-sector right now through turn number 5. This is a battle for lucky number P13, lucky P13 in this race, and let's see who's going to be able to get it done at the very end. Still enough time for these drivers, and should be noted, this is a battle for P3 of the Spec 2 competitors as well. Eric Luke is still your Spec 2 leader, running about 1.7 seconds back of your overall race leader of Marco Pinero. Now, I gotta wonder here, Charles, will we end up seeing Eric Luke think, you know what, I don't really have the speed to be able to close up that gap, and maybe allow Maurizio Naselli to close up the gap himself? If anyone will be able to go tit for tat with Pinero, it's probably going to be Maurizio.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think Naselli has finally decided that, yeah, it's time for me to go, and so now he's looking for a way around Luke. I don't know that Luke is just going to let him have it. I think Luke is a racer, and he wants to get as high as a finishing position as possible, but I'm not sure that he's going to be able to hold off Naselli. We've seen Naselli just run through the field and win races, so it's going to be a tall order for Luke to hang on to P2.
Yeah, this is a big uphill battle for both of those racers. So reel in the number 16 of Marco Pinero, a very quick and accomplished driver in the world of the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors, has won some championships in the past, already won the race a little bit earlier on this season. So let's see how Marco Pinero will be able to do for round number 9 of this championship. It was earlier on this season, all the way back at Long Beach, where we saw Marco Pinero grab the race win. So again, another time twisted track, very similar, in fact, to we were thinking that when Kurt Nunez was in a spot to win in the Masters category, that was his last win in the Masters class, and now it's a bit of a gap that he has to try and usurp to catch up to Jeff Fritcher. But Fritcher is actually, he's not out of harm's way yet. He's got Josh Wilkie and Matt Thompson right in front of him, maybe getting held up a little bit. If Andre Favini and Kurt Nunez can maybe work together as a duo, we may end up seeing a battle for the Masters win after all.
Yeah, I think you're right. We just saw Pleva move over. I think he let. Yeah, I'm not sure if he got a slowdown or not, or if he just moved over and let Jason go by. But obviously, he come through the chicane sideways, and so I think he may be struggling just a little bit as well. And I don't think he wanted to hold up. As we'll see on board here, is he going to get a slowdown? Let's look at his lines through this corner here. Yeah, I guess if he did, he got it earlier But yeah, he just let Jason go, just moved over and let him have the position. So, I mean, good sportsmanship on Pleva's part, but it was obviously, and we see Naselli has passed Luke somewhere.
Yeah, so Mercy and Helen now jumping into second. I think it was a move down into turn number 1. Yeah, you can see these drivers heading down that start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. Luke going to have Naselli on the inside and really did not fight that one bit. Naselli gets a move done down into the first corner. And now let's see if that gap is going to go down finally. As nearly contact being made with Matt Thompson and Jeff Fritcher. Those two drivers, all three of these drivers that you see on screen right now, occupying the final spots inside of the overall top 10, and 3 different classes as well. You got Wilkie, a Spec 1 competitor and the reigning Spec 2 champion. You got the Spec 2 man of Matt Thompson and the Masters competitor of Jeff Fritcher. So this is really getting dicey. And one thing to raise about all of this as well is the fact that Matt Thompson is looking to make as much inroads as he can on Eric Luke. Granted, he will still be getting outscored heading into this race, and Eric Luke getting dangerously close to that point where he may be able to seal up the championship a couple of races early here in Spec 2. But nonetheless, for Matt Thompson, it may not seem like a whole lot, but getting a move done on Wilkie to slip his way up into 8th may be a good result, doubly so considering I'm not sure if Eric Luke will be your overall winner. Although I say that, the gap is closing a bit between Pinero and Naselli, now 2.1 seconds.
Yep, the gap is closing. Naselli is working his way up a little bit, but I think we're coming up to the white flag here, so I think they got 1 lap, and I don't know if he's going to be able to make up 2 seconds in 1 lap.
Yeah, see, that right there was me thinking it was 28 minutes on the board, and actually, I knew for sure it wasn't 28. I was just so focused on the fact the gap was going down, and I was like, oh, they've got plenty of time. What do you mean they're on the final lap? 1 more lap of racing action for Marco Pinero to grab his 2nd win this season. I think the battle is going to be this one between Wilkie, Thompson, and Fritcher. Fritcher, as it stands presently, he's sitting comfortable in Masters to get yet another win for himself. Matt Thompson, he is feeling the burn. He's in the midst of a sandwich right now as another battle maybe got flare up with Naselli and Luke. They've closed up that gap yet again between themselves and Pinero. Now 1.6 seconds. It's closed up by a 0.4 of a second in the first few corners of this lap. I wonder if Pinero may be taking it easy just to give us something to talk about. That's side-by-side fighting with Thompson and Wilkie down into turn number 1. Now Jeff Fritcher maybe going to get a move done on Thompson as he ran wide out of turn number 1. He's going to be stuck on the outside, though, down into the downhill left-hander of turn number 2. Around the outside doesn't really work heading through that section of the racetrack, although still has a little bit of overlap and actually gets a move done. Well done to Jeff Fritcher for a move to jump his way up into P9, but it's not over yet. Matt Thompson maybe going to fight back as they head their way off into turn number 4 here in just a few moments' time. At the front of the field, though, Marco Pinero still holding onto a 1.4 second gap to himself and Maurizio Naselli. If we had a 50-minute long race, I think we'd have to talk about Naselli and Eric Luke getting involved in that battle for the win, but as they head their way off through the final few corners of this race, it looks like the main fighting will be between Maurizio Naselli and Eric Luke. You can see Luke may be thinking about going for a move down the inside into turn number 12, just not close enough. That gap has certainly closed up, though, 0.8 of a second right towards the end. I wonder if Marco Pinero's maybe run out of fuel. That gap is still closing more, below a half a second as they head their way through the final corner. If Marco Pinero's running out of gas, this may be Naselli's for the taking. He pulls to the inside as they head their way onto the start-finish straightaway. He's out of fuel, and Maurizio Naselli is going to win the race. Naselli wins it, Eric Luke in P2, and Marco Pinero finishes in 3rd. Those 3 drivers, in fact, were covered by 0.220 of a second at the end of it. Wow.
I looked over when we started the final lap at the timing and scoring and noticed that Pinero's pit stop was 2.5 seconds slower than Eric Luke. I'm sorry, it was 2.5 seconds slower than Naselli, and Eric Luke was a little bit longer. So yeah, it just, Pinero made a fuel gamble and it just didn't pay off, unfortunately for him, but it made a very exciting ending to this race as he runs out coming around the final corner, and just enough for Naselli and Luke to get in there and get P1 and P2.
And to invoke some very technical terminology, that's a kick on the gonads for Marco Pinero. He was on track for the victory. I said that if this was a 50-minute long race, it would probably be Nazelli's for the taking. I was thinking, seeing that gap go down, is Marco Pinero maybe running out of gas? Is he potentially running out of fuel? And then I was like, okay, it's stayed about the same, so I wonder if it is just him trying to give us something to talk about. Charles, I think one series that we commentated with a different broadcaster about a year ago, we had two teammates who would always swap the lead, and they said in their voice chat that they were just doing it to give us something to talk about on the broadcast. That was not placebo, though. Luke grabbing P2 and winning yet again in the Spec 2 category. But Marco Pinero, heartbreaker of heartbreaker, the driver of the number 16 car, not going to get a second win.
No, he's not. It was a good run. He obviously had great pace up at the front, but just miscalculated by a couple tenths of a gallon on his fuel, and that cost.
Oh, as
my Discord decided to reboot itself.
Sure. I was thinking, like, did I just disconnect? Because I lost all audio there for a second. I was like, but we got you back now, Charles.
All right, yeah, I was just saying, just miscalculation on the fuel, and it's a tough way to lose a race. But I'm wondering what kind of shenanigans we're going to get here.
Marco Pinero just gave the broken angle. Oh, he's nearly upside down. Oh, what in the world are we? Oh, there's Eric Luke coming in right at the last second. Oh, man, I'm not even sure what we just witnessed. Oh, more contact me. It's something, all right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that was, but, this is the standard for the Weekend Warriors is we destroy the car at the end of the race. I think I would have tried to get back around to the chicane and see if I could get a good launch off that sausage curb. But, that's just me. But once again, great race, great finish, and it was. It's a very difficult track, and I think these drivers did a really good job of navigating the circuit. And of course, we're going to have a little fun at the end, of course.
Yeah, always going to have some fun at the end of this race. Burning it down, and by burning it down, you turn your race car into just basically an unrecognizable pile of metal pulp in the runoff area of whatever corner it may be. Gosh, I've been doing these Weekend Warriors broadcasts for coming up to over a year full time, and doing that. I think my first one was back in March of 2023, so been around the block before when it comes to the Weekend Warriors, but I can never, as long as I'm doing this stuff, I will never be able to just look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's normal stuff, no harm, no foul. No, I look at cars crashing into each other, I'm like, what in the world am I witnessing here at the present moment? So more drivers burning it down. That's Andallo upside down and nosing it into the fence. Who was that coming in trying to T-bone Jason Green?
Was that the 909? Is that Credwell? Maybe Credwell. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Cathcart. Okay.
Brad Cathcart, according to our producer Guido, and someone just blew their motor up. I think that may have been Cathcart. Someone was revving the crap out of their engine, and I heard the unmistakable sound of metal snapping, which indicates that someone popped an engine. So, some rather odd things going on here at the end of this race. So I think with that scene going on, we'll take a look at the results at the end of this race and let you know that in a dramatic series of events, Maurizio Nazelli grabs the win at the end of it all. 2.1 tenths was the gap between himself and Eric Luke, who finishes in second, winning in the Spec 2 class yet again. Marco Pinero rounds at your podium in third. We have Jason Green finishing in fourth, Aleix Pleva in fifth, Flavio Andallo in sixth, Joachim Osbeck finishes in seventh, Josh Wilkie finally with a good result finishes in eighth. Jeff Fritcher wins it in the Masters class with Matt Thompson rounding out your top 10.
Yep, Andrea Favini finishes in 11th, Kurt Nunez in 12th, Diego Todeschini in 13th, Philip Berry in 14th, Paolo Breme in 15th, Tom Gradwell 16th, Brad Cathcart 17th, Paul Jackson in 18th, Mario Kremser in 19th, Andrew Love rounds out your top 20, Michele Vallini in P21, Jeff Jacobson in P22, and Adam Bradshaw rounds out your 23 car finishing order.
So those are your results at the end of this race. Round number 9 for the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. And I can see some drivers looking to have a chat with us at the end of all of this. I can see Eric Luke and Matt Thompson, the two Spec 2 competitors, looking to maybe have a chance to have a chat with us. Charles, I will let you do the honors of interviewing our P2 finisher overall and winner in Spec 2, that being Eric Luke.
Yeah, let's bring Eric in here and have a chat. Eric, pretty interesting last lap there, but a good race by you overall. You basically hung in there with the big dogs and did the Spec 2 group proud.
Oh, thank you. It was it was a long week of practice. I am doing everything I can to try to stay with these guys up front, and it is. This is the hardest racing I've ever done in any of the leagues, in iRacing and the endurance. This is, you can't make a mistake with these guys. If you make a mistake, you're done. And I'm very happy to have finished where I finished at. And unfortunately for Marco, I guess he probably ran out of fuel, is my guess.
Yep, exactly right.
He did an amazing job from start to finish, and that little mistake right there, I mean, crossing the line 0.005, I think it was, from taking second from him, and it was a fun race, very, very difficult.
Yeah. So, what did you think about the Spec Racer here at the Hungaroring? Now, obviously, Hungaroring got a lot of publicity when it was brought into iRacing, and they ran basically everything here. But not so much in recent times. So this is a very technical track. So what was your thoughts about trying to get the Spec Racer around this track in a hurry?
It is actually a lot of fun to hot lap in, because there's several corners that if you just get it right, it just feels so good, right? So coming out of, I believe, 5, there's the high speed kink on the left-hander. You time that right, you can power through it in 4th gear, and then you got to swing out to the right and gently trail brake the car while downshifting, going into that sweeping right-hander. And when you get that right, you make up so much time. You get it wrong, and you can blow a half a second. So it's a very challenging track in the fact that you have to stay concentrated. You can't relax at all during any of the corners in this lap, because you'll lose to the guys in front. And I just so happened to make very, very few mistakes this race, and that's kind of the benefit of it.
There you go. So next week we have the Phoenix Road Course, another one of those that's little used, but we've put it to work here in the Weekend Warriors over the past couple of seasons. So have you had a chance to get any laps there?
I burned a few laps getting familiar with it before the start of this race earlier this week, and I was checking the Discord forums and seeing what the times the guys are posting up in there, and I've got some work to do, but it'll be fun. Turn 1 is an absolute joy. It's pretty much trail braking the entire time, and it's another one of those corners, you get it right, it just feels really, really good.
Eric, we'll let you go and celebrate your class victory in the P2 overall. But first, we'll let you give any thanks or shout outs before you get out of here.
Big shout out to Cloud Valve. Shout out to Mauricio and Marco. Great battling those guys up front. And if my wife is watching, hi, Jen.
There you go, Eric. Congratulations. We'll see you next week.
Take care, gents.
And that right there was Eric Luke, your P2 finisher at the end of this race. I think a little bit confusion as to whether or not he ended up in P2 or P3. But according to the iRacing results, he did finish in P2. So well done to him on his second place result overall. And finishing second place in the class is going to be Matt Thompson, who's now joining the commentary booth. Want to have a chat with him. Matt, welcome into the commentary booth. Well done on the result here at the Hungaroring today. How about you talk us through that very challenging race here in the SRFs?
Oh, it was busy up there with Diego. Kept me real honest for the first few laps, and Kurt couldn't quite get him until close to the pit stop, and then they came back out behind. Almost got Josh out of the pit stop, but he got me back pretty quick, and then Jeff was putting pressure behind and tried to send one on Josh and lost the spot. But overall, pretty good.
I can imagine not too upset about your performance here at the Hungaroring. Looked like a very challenging race out there for you drivers. So I want to ask you about what your thoughts were about this combination.
It's a downforce track in a car without downforce, so it's quite interesting. These I've really coming to like the SRFs. I tried to drive them a few years ago before the update. I didn't do well in them. I'm a Ford, the FR500S Mustang guy. That's what I focus on here in the iRacing and in real life. I've got a 13, so I'm used to driving that. And these cars are a good analogy for that. They help me learn how to balance the momentum and the weight balance to get the turn in. Lots of trail braking. It's a good car to learn on.
This car is super, super fun. I was going to try and go for a divisional championship in the Spec Racer Ford official series a couple of seasons ago, but my karter's back after spending 10 years in go-karts decided to throw out on me in the earlier stages of the year, so I wasn't able to run at all throughout the season. But you've been able to do pretty well for yourself here in the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. Gonna be running at the Phoenix, the Legacy Phoenix Road Course, track that doesn't get a whole lot of use. It's a rather peculiar ride. So what are your thoughts heading into the next round this season?
It's been a long time since I've driven that track. I think that was one of my first tracks when I started driving the Mustang and PCC back in 2020, 2021. And man, it's going to be a trip in the way back to drive that track. It's going to be interesting in these cars with all those curbs that you got to hit out in the middle of nowhere.
I remember getting some seat time in about a year ago at this point for a Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors broadcast that I was doing at that track, and I remember enjoying that combination in a rather odd way, so fingers crossed that you'll be able to get the same enjoyment at the combination in 1 week's time here, Matt. But before we let you go and celebrate this P2 result in Spec 2 today, is there anybody you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Thanks to you guys for putting on the broadcast. Thanks to Stevie for putting this together, having us in here and letting us have fun. It was good to meet him a few weeks ago at the Howlett Hoosier series that was there, him and Josh Justice. So just thanks to those guys for letting me in and kind of showing me the ropes, and Jason Green for walking through the incidents every week.
And thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth. Always nice to have a chat with you at the end of these broadcasts, and excited to see you back out on the track in Phoenix in 1 week's time, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And that right there was Matt Thompson, your P2 finisher in the Spec 2 category. Ends this race just barely inside the top 10 at the end of it all. But Charles, the Phoenix Road Course, some of those rovals, despite the fact that they are rather goofy to look at when it comes to the track maps, they can put on some pretty fantastic racing. So that's going to be a good one in 1 week's time.
I think so. It's kind of a double-edged sword with those little known, little used, little racing circuits. It's everybody's more on a level playing field, so you might get a lot more competition in amongst your classes because everybody's kind of learning or relearning that track and just trying to get a feel for the layout and stuff. But on the other side, then there's a potential for some very, very spectacular wrecks. So we don't want to see that, but we'll commentate on them if they happen. But we'll look forward to it. As always, it's been a really good season so far. I don't expect anything to be any different next week.
And as we switch our attention to next week's broadcast for both the Formula Fords and the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors, I have some absolutely fantastic news for all of you viewers who tune into these broadcasts week in and week out. Going to be a rather festive occasion for all of you in 1 week's time, because for the first time since September 29th of last year, I'm not going to be here next week. I haven't had a Sunday off since then, and I would quite like to be able to watch the Indy 500. So, Charles, you're going to be here. There are going to be some pretty good races, and I will be looking forward to tuning back on those broadcasts after everything is said and done, and seeing the bumpiness of the Phoenix Road Course. I remember driving around that track in the Spec Racer Fords. It got me some pretty good licenses in the sports car category on iRacing, but I drive very goofy combinations just for fun on iRacing, so that may be part of the reason why I enjoyed that combination. And hey, if that sounds like a pretty interesting broadcast and all of you want to tune into that, have to hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and also like the stream while you're at it so you never miss out on any of the broadcasts here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. And happy to take a look at some of the YouTube shorts that we have up here on the channel as well. Keep you up to date with all the stuff going on here on that Slow Motion Broadcasting. The action really does not stop. But as for today's action for round number 9 of the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors at the Hungaroring, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, Charles Boshell joining me in the commentary booth, and Guido Marzucchi doing a wonderful job working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching this broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting today, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.